War is often remembered by its greatest victories. But history is also shaped by battles the world chose to forget. In the chaos of World War II, when nations collapsed and borders burned, there were soldiers who fought not for glory, not for fame, but simply to survive, to protect, and to hold the line when hope was almost gone. Welcome back to ESKC Movie 111, the channel where forgotten stories rise again, and silent sacrifices finally find their voice. Today, we dive into The Forgotten Battle, a powerful war film that doesn't glorify combat, but exposes its cost. A story where young soldiers are trapped between impossible orders, flooded lands, and an enemy closing in from every direction. This is not a tale of heroes seeking medals. This is a story of fear, brotherhood, and the brutal reality of war. Where every decision means life or death, and every step forward could be the last. As bombs fall and lines blur between right and wrong, The Forgotten Battle reminds us that history is not only written by generals, but by ordinary men forced into extraordinary circumstances. So prepare yourself, turn down the lights, and open your mind to a chapter of war that history nearly erased. Because some battles are forgotten not because they were unimportant, but because remembering them is too painful. This is ESKC Movie 111. And this is The Forgotten Battle. Wars are often remembered for their great victories. The names of generals, flags, and histories written by the victors. But there was one battle that claimed thousands of lives, changed the fate of a nation, and was almost forgotten by the world. The year was 1944. Europe was engulfed in war. Amidst the mud, blood, and cold seawater, a small battle became the key to the Allies' great victory. This is the story of a young soldier, a pilot haunted by his past, and a resistance fighter who must choose between love and freedom. First, we meet a woman named Toon, the daughter of a Dutch war doctor named Visser. Visser works for the Germans, and Toon has a younger brother named Dirk. Elsewhere, Dirk is documenting the German troops as they march away. He is interrupted by German soldiers who demand his camera. When Dirk refuses to hand it over, the soldiers become angry, seize it, and Dirk's camera falls onto the road. At that moment, the camera was run over by a car and damaged. Dirk became angry and picked up a rock and threw it at the windshield of a passing car. It hit the driver's window, and the car crashed into the German troops. Feeling targeted by the German troops, Dirk fled and managed to escape. But now, Dirk is a fugitive throughout the German Forces territory. Moving to the Russian front line in Narva, a young man named Stavarin, he led his troops to stop a tank with a machine gun. Stavarin tried to save his friend Lucas. But Lucas, who was so terrified, surrendered himself to the enemy. Moving to Dorset, Will is a young pilot trying to train as a fighter pilot. He is the son of an Air Force chief. His father, who holds a high rank, is worried about his son. However, Will insists that he is ready to go to war. He goes to great lengths, even lying to his father's subordinates that he has his father's permission. In the end, the lie works, and the captain believes him and takes Will to the war zone. Back in Germany, Commander Oberst Berghoff arrived in the city center. He issued an arrest warrant for the perpetrator who threw rocks at the car, whom he considered a terrorist. A few days later, Oberst discovered Dirk's identity. He immediately rushed to his house with several German military troops. He ordered Dr. Visser to hand over his son immediately. Then Oberst left with his troops. Back to Will, the amateur pilot who forced himself to join the war through the air. He became the co-pilot for the captain, who automatically sat next to him. terrible incident befell him. The plane he was riding with the pilot was shot down. And the pilot was also injured by a second shot from the enemy. The entire squadron had to make an emergency landing in a fairly deep swamp. Turning to his younger brother once his whereabouts were known, his father had no choice but to hand him over to the commander.
Und wir hoffen wirklich.
However, Dr. Visser had a special condition for the commander. If he handed over his son, the punishment his son received must be light and not burdensome. Elsewhere, Will's plane crashed in a swamp, but it turned out that they were all safe and alive. However, they now had to hide from the encircling German forces. After finding a hiding place, the captain was killed by German forces. Will was left behind by his two friends while he was fast asleep. They betrayed him out of fear and left. The journey became increasingly difficult. As they were about to leave the river, Will, who was so determined, lost his only remaining friend. Will tried to persuade him to be strong, but once again, his friend sought a safe way out. And now, Will left the place alone in a lifeboat. The day of Dirk's departure arrived. It was a day when Toon was devastated to see his younger brother being punished by the German soldiers. But before leaving, Dirk gave him a photo to give to Jana. It would be passed on to the Allied forces. The photo showed the location of the German soldiers and the equipment they used. Regardless, Dirk's father was also very sad to see his son leave. On a different day, Toon went to Jana's shop. He followed his sister's instructions. When Toon was about to hand over the photo to Jana, he made one request: that his sister be helped to be freed. However, the next day, Toon received news from Staveren that his sister would be executed. Without delay, Dr. Visser also heard the news and rushed to find Commander Aberst. But he didn't care. And finally, Dr. Visser saw his son leave for the last time, and Dirk was executed. After learning of her sister's death, Toon and Jana now try to help the Allied forces by sending them a map of the German army's hiding place. While preparing to send the location, Toon was captured, but before that, Jana managed to escape by boarding a ship they found. Jana arrived in Allied territory in a critical condition and eventually died in a military camp. However, her death was not in vain. The map had reached the Allied commander. However, before Jana reached the Allied territory, a few days ago, Allied forces had launched an attack on the swamp and bridge, where many Allied troops were defeated. One of the reasons was the open terrain and lack of defenses, which left the Allied forces vulnerable to the Germans, who had prepared thoroughly, with various weapons, machine guns, landmines, etc. The Allies, feeling defeated, had to retreat, as the Germans were too strong at that time. After retreating and returning to camp, the troops looked very tired and disappointed, including Will. With the map sent by Toon and Jana, the Allied forces immediately devised a strategy and launched an all-out attack on the German army. Sure enough, that night, after devising their strategy, the Allied forces quietly approached the German army headquarters without them knowing. The German army was attacked from behind. They were unable to move. Many German soldiers fell. That Staveren was a Dutchman who was forced to wear a German army uniform and had no other choice. After the defeat in the swamp, Staveren returned to headquarters. He walked with a blank stare. He felt numb and resigned. Upon arrival, Staveren took a drink. Suddenly, he saw Toon about to be killed by German soldiers. Then Staveren saved Toon. The German army was increasingly under pressure due to the Allied encirclement. They were pushed back by crushing defeat. Now the port of Antwerp was under Allied control. And the Battle of the Scheldt became the final offensive for Germany. 3,231 Allied troops, 4,250 German soldiers, and 2,283 civilians lost their lives. This was the most horrific battle in history. At the end of this battle, no hero truly returned home as a victor. All that remained was blood-soaked ground, names never spoken, and tales of bravery buried by time. The Forgotten Battle is not just a story about war. It is a reminder that history is often written without hearing the cries of those who fought in silence. These soldiers did not ask to be remembered, they simply endured so that the world today could breathe freely. And as the screen fades to black, remember one thing. There are great sacrifices not recorded in history books, yet their echoes still live on in every freedom we enjoy. For war may end, but its wounds and sacrifices never truly fade away. Thank you for witnessing this nearly forgotten story. Don't forget to subscribe and, until we meet again in the next dark tale, only on SKC Movie 111. Thank you for watching until the end. Don't forget to leave a comment, like, and subscribe. May you all be healthy and live long lives. See you in the next video.